Has the Festival of Battles driven the community insane? It's time for another community discussion. How's it, everybody? Celtic Link here. We're back for another Dokkan battle video. In today's video, we have another community discussion regarding the new Festival of Battles event. For better or worse, this battle is here to stay. It is one of the most challenging events we've had to date, and it takes knowledge and understanding of not only attack flow, but how to set your rotations, who and when to rotate, and a whole lot of math. You gotta know what these bosses do well ahead before coming into the fight. It does bring new life into many units who may have been left in the dust previously, right? We've already done a video with Tech transforming Trunks and Int Broly, who did very well there. And as well, it lets the 10th anniversary LRs, including the EZAs, shine at their fullest potential. It is quite fun watching LR Tech Vegito melt a 2 billion HP bar at the end with his counters. But on the flip side, it is a huge time sink. Many players simply do not have the time to take on. You couple that with, at the moment, how clears come down to basic RNG, right? A lot of things outside of your control, and there's really only one team with little variation to complete it. You add that in with attack placements, boss supers, critical hits, and in additionals that can all make or break your run. It makes for a very unforgiving experience for many players. So the question I asked to you guys was, give us your unabridged thoughts on the Festival Battles. Do you find it fun? Do you find it hard? Do you think we should evaluate units here, especially as we get new releases that may or may not be stacking units that do well in this 2.5 hour long event? So let's go ahead and hop in. We're going to start with the replies on Twitter, then we'll hop over to the Discord, and then we'll take a look at our posts on YouTube. So scrolling on down here, I am based, regardless of what the community thinks. The fight actually made him think and analyze how to set the rotations, stacking with the right characters, floating them properly, and knowing how much damage the boss does, etc., etc. The fight makes the 10th Annie have that flair. Yeah, I mean, I do agree, and I did mention that in the initial post, that it requires a test of every bit of your knowledge to take it down. So one thing I did try to mention in the response to this was that at the end it does come down to a little bit to RNG at the very end, even if you do all of those things correctly. Just simply do, like, you could have a unit not do an additional super, and that just straight up ruins the run. And I mean, he does respond back with a really good point, right? You know, like him, like many others, just went in, got the no item run, and probably not going back into the fight. And he thinks that if we are to rank units here, it's probably being done in bad faith, because of how RNG it can be. It doesn't necessarily mean much for the unit at the end. And it basically says at the end here, if a new unit is good in every single fight and also decent in this fight, then it's an outlier, not the norm. Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. I think we have very few units that are good in every single fight, right? Including this one. Half of the 10th anniversary LRs are not good in this fight, and it doesn't make them bad units, at least in my opinion. It just means they're catered for a different event, which is fine, right? We have tons of different events. Joe Saiyan, our good boy Joe Saiyan, he does reply, right? He thinks this fight will get progressively easier as new units, with new units, as all hard fights do. That is true. That is very true. We will get more help throughout the year, but for whatever reason, they keep avoiding the easiest answer to long fights and not putting the game down. The answer being burst mode, unlocked for any events. That That being said, he does think the event is too steep of a curve, that the turn count makes it feel worse than it would be without it. He understands what they were going for, but until we get newer units, it is very frustrating, and he doesn't see many doing it again. And yeah, that's kind of, you know, I mean, that's really what it is. It's the charge counter for me that kills it, right? Because you can do everything right, and then again, you just not do additional, or you don't do a crit, which you have very little control of, and that's it for the run. The run's over because you didn't do that, and that's 2.5 hours gone due to something you couldn't control. Or better yet, right, you have to rely, like as it currently stands, right, and this is kind of where I'm with him, where he says it will get easier with new units, right? Better yet, you could have things like, you know, you currently need Fizz Gogeta's counters for several of the phases at the end, especially the Daima phase, and I have had on multiple occasions both Daima characters just straight up not super, and that makes it extremely difficult to clear through that phase without some shenanigans. So yeah, but of course, right, it will get easier. We will get new stackers that can take on the event. I mean, think the Kid Goku, for example, right? He's really good. But my follow-up question is to that, and I will address this again at the end, but what if they don't? What if Tanabata, the next major LR release, isn't a stacker, right? What if that isn't a stacker, right? Because my big concern is that we're going to, as I had mentioned here in the beginning, right? Are we to start evaluating units based on their performance here specifically in relation to other units, right? And so what if our next units are not stackers? Now Joe does end up responding, right? Well, it's not a big deal because we will get some at another point. So I mean, I think that is a fair criticism. I think that's fair, right? Yeah, they will come, but I think me personally am more concerned on what if they don't? What do we do if we don't get more stackers? What if these are all the stackers we get for the year? Probably not, but you know, it's just thought, right? If we decide that that's what we're going to do, that would essentially mean that every following release from here is not going to be considered good if we are only evaluating here, and that's kind of what I'm worried about. Now, moving on to the next one, where are we at? Okay. So this was, I'll pull this one up because this was kind of a response to a response from my to Joe, and this was good, right? So Fade mentions, right, giving something like defense 500% from the 18th turn, or something like that. It's like, I think they could do that, right? They don't make them a stacker, but they give them something extra for long events. That could be useful, but the issue with this is, I mean, they could do it with attack. I'm sure it's just an example, right? But, right, the issue with units that aren't stacking is ultimately their damage won't be enough, and then you're going to lose to the charge counters. And I really wish I brought that up here, but I didn't. But the issue with something like this is, even with this, it wouldn't be increasing their damage output enough to help you through the final phases, especially the Daima phase. The Gogeta and Vegito phase aren't too bad in this scenario because it's one boss you can focus all your attacks on, but the Daima phase, having to split the attacks each with 800 million HP, totaling in 1.6 each, or total, like that, non-stacking unit really, really hurts your ability to clear through that phase. So, you know, that's just... that's kind of where I'm at on that. Plus, I don't like the idea of locking a character's potential behind a turn count. We don't like it when it's done for short turn. I don't see why we would like it for this, personally. And again, it effectively renders the unit useless in Battle Hardened Formidable Foes and Red Zone. And then, of course, Fade comes back and says, also give them reduced damage received by 55% for 7 turns or something, right? Like something like how Beast Gohan has. And it's like, that's well and good, but Beast Gohan's an anniversary LR. Most other characters are probably not going to have something like that forever. And, it's really, it all just comes back to my question. All right, let's say we get some units like that. What about the units that are not geared for that? What if we have another LR that isn't geared towards that fight, but instead geared for, say, Battle Hardened Formidable Foes like Super Saiyan Gohan? Okay, and he does mention that, of course, we will survive. We have easy ATURs that can take this down. And it's like, yes, I do recognize that, right? I took it down with Broly. I took it down with Tech Trunks. Like, I get that we have older units that can do it. And that's kind of my point, right? A lot of people have been saying here, it's like, oh, well, if they're good here, then obviously they're going to be good elsewhere. And that's just not true. I mentioned it in my Tech Trunks video. It's like, it's just... Yeah, okay, they're good here. That's great. Gohan is good here. Tech Trunks is good here. Broly is good here. Glorio is good here. Glorio's an exception. He's a modern TUR, but point still stands that yeah, all of these things will be good, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being good elsewhere, right? We kind of saw the cracks in Glorio during some of these red zone fights, right? In Battle Hardened Formidable Foes too, for that matter, especially in the Cell Max fight with those, and the Broly fight with those AoEs. We saw the cracks in Glorio, so just being good here doesn't necessarily translate to being good elsewhere, right? Especially, right, because, I mean, let's be real, right? The runs with HL Vegeta, the runs with Tech Trunks, like, nobody was saying that they were good prior to this event, so them being able to compete here does not make them necessarily good, and it doesn't mean they're going to be good elsewhere. So I find that kind of a falsehood anyways. But he does end it up with, of course, a new fusions equivalent will come. At the moment, the anniversary has just ended, and the last good units tanked, but nothing like Beast Gohan. Good units did damage, not like HL Broly. You know, yeah, of course, this is what it's going to be. No units are going to compare to Vegito and Gogeta. Of course they're not. I wouldn't expect them to. So it's just more so, right? How do we approach, if we decide that this is the event we're evaluating, how do we approach units that don't stack? Because that would essentially mean that any unit that doesn't stack is not going to be valuable to any player, and I can't vibe with that personally. Of course, we have our good friend Shadow here responding here. So let's pull up. What does he say here? The challenge. This is a challenged event. Anyone saying otherwise is, in my belief, downplaying it for whatever their reason is. You have to think meticulously towards the end of the fight and make sure you do an autopilot through the early part of the fight. You had to make sure you got as many stacks as possible while also putting the necessary damage to meet the charge counter and beat the boss. It's definitely the hardest event we've ever seen, and it is a lot of fun. It doesn't say it's perfect. For me, the charge counter gives less variety to teams right now, and it makes your team building very strict. Time also to an extent, but I don't do my runs in one sitting anyways. Usually takes a break. Yeah, so he kind of acknowledged, right, really all the points that I have been mentioning, right, is the charge counter is the biggest killer here, right, and currently, as it stands, there's one team that can deal with that charge counter. Of course, that will change over time, but not every unit is going to allow that to change. And then I disagree slightly with the idea of the difficulty and why I mean that. It's challenging. It's not difficult. And what I mean by that is, right, it does require you to think. You can't autopilot it. You have to play everything right. It's challenging in that aspect, but the difficulty is artificial because of the charge counter. Because at the end of it, even if you do all the meticulous planning, you stack correctly, you rotate correctly, you build up, you use the actives on the right turns, you transform, it still comes down to RNG at the end. It super attack placement, which, I mean, okay, that is fair, that's always a thing, but as it currently stands right now, you are reliant on Tech Vegito's counters. You are reliant on Tech Viz Gogeta's counters. It makes it very difficult when bosses don't do what they're supposed to do, and then you're limited to a turn count. And especially, you know, when you also have to factor in crits and additionals and total boss number of attacks too, for that matter, right? When we're talking about the utilization of Vegito, I have lost runs due to the charge counter, due to the final phase, just simply I think he has a max potential of 14 attacks, and I've had a phase where he only did 10 attacks, meaning, right, and that 10 attacks left me with like half an HP bar. That one counter would have been enough, right? Like, had he actually done the max of 14 attacks, we would have killed, right? So again, when everything at the end then comes down to RNG, whether you win or not, at that point you're battling RNG more than you are the event itself. And I think we did kind of come to an agreement at some point about that, right? You know, just kind of going back and forth about how the different RNG could be placed and cause your loss. And we both agree it basically comes down to the charge counters, which make part of the event cheap, but no less a challenge. And I think we both agree that it is a challenge. I just personally disagree that it is difficult, right? And I feel like there is a distinction there. So moving on, who else we got here? Jumbo Shark. Sorry, skipped over here. We got Vector. All right, so shout out to Vector for responding. Really appreciate his response. He likes it enough. Certainly wouldn't be running it more than a couple times a week, and it's amazing for streams and playing in VC. And hesitate to take it too seriously from a ranking perspective, considering how out of line it is with the rest of the game, and how you right now you have to have this specific thing or don't, and it is for being good there. And yeah, so I kind of feel like we're in the same boat. We're kind of in agreement here. I don't know how much his opinion has changed since making this post. It's been a couple of days. I was waiting since I made this post. I was waiting for a few other people to respond, but they ended up not responding, so we're just gonna roll. But I do think we're kind of on the same page with this. It is great for streaming. I do enjoy running it. I want to get that out there. And I said this in the Trunks and the Broly showcase. I do enjoy running it. But the tremendous time sink it requires is a big ask for a lot of players. It's really only good for people who have the ability to stream it. Otherwise, yeah, for most people, it's one and done. And again, in terms, he kind of seems like he's agreeing with me on the ranking perspective, that it is kind of like you need to be a stacker, and you can't just be a stacker, right? As we saw with Trunks, right? You can't just be a stacker. You also have to have a little bit of damage reduction, right? And some other things to help you out. And if you don't have those things, you're really going to struggle in the end. Otherwise, you're just an option, right? An option while the fusions, you know, the big boy fusions handle business. And I don't know that that's necessarily how we need to be looking at units, right? Because no unit, as others have mentioned, no unit is going to live up to the potential of the fusions, right? So at that point, you're just rating options for the fight, right? Your sixth options while the fusions handle the rest. We didn't allow that for Beast Gohan, and we didn't allow that for any other fight, so I don't see why we would suddenly be okay with that here. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe people have changed. Moving on, Jumbo Shark, love the thumbnail, thank you. You think the event is fun for the first time. You enjoy watching other dudes' runs near the end. And you believe it's just a one-off special event, not something we will see again for a while at least. And so, yeah, I do agree. I think this was just something meant for the 10th anniversary. Maybe we'll get one at Worldwide. I doubt it, but we could get something similar at Worldwide. Maybe something slightly shorter, but just like all the Worldwide bosses. But that was also kind of covered here. I don't know. We'll see. But maybe we'll get something more like, you know, 30 or 40 phases. I feel like that's more manageable, but we'll see. But I mean, at least he's enjoying it. Raudo-kun, all right, shout out, buddy. Glad that you could respond here. Don't ever want to see an event like this again. The amount of things that can go wrong in this, and sometimes isn't your fault. The concept is good. The execution is atrocious. And yeah, I kind of think we both agree, right? I love the idea of an infinite stacking event like this. It's so cool to see units like, dude, I mean, you guys heard the happiness in my voice with getting Tech Trunks to 129 million in our video the other day, right? I love doing this with units. It's fun. But the execution, right? The limitations they place, the fact that basically the fusions are running the show for the time being, that could change in the future. It just doesn't make for a fun time for a lot of people, especially when, again, loss isn't necessarily your default. Moving on, King Hitman. All the people have to do is just beat as many levels as they can, which is just the first 25, with items and support memories, and then sit until the units that players need over time come out. He enjoys the event and agree with all the criticism, but it's still far from the worst event we've had. That's fair. It's not the worst event we had. It is monotonous. It is consuming relative usual events, but a lot of people are upset that that the title don't deserve they don't deserve right now. Non-tenure units being judged on the event, only slightly reasonable. It's mostly irrelevant unless there's missions added over time. So I don't agree with the sentiment that people are upset that they can't get the title. I don't think that that's what it is. In fact, I've hardly seen the title mentioned at all in the discussion. I think the complaints are mostly about the time it requires and the charge count. And just simply not having the units to take it down, which is, that'll change over time, but I think it's a bit disingenuous to suggest that it's simply because they want a title that for an event they can't beat. I don't think that that's what it is. For non-tenure units being judged, it is slightly reasonable, but irrelevant. And so we're kind of in the same page, right? It's only relevant in judging their usefulness in this fight. It's not irrelevant in judging their usefulness outside of that. So I kind of think we're on the same page there. Oh wow, why did that jump down so much? Where are we at? All right, Jaren. You think the event sucks? It's not fun. It took a collective of 15 hours of your life to beat, which is bafflingly wasn't even 6 attempts. It is difficult, especially if you don't have both 10th anniversary fusions, but it's not real difficult. All right, it's a BS difficulty that involves passing 70 plus turns of RNG checks, especially when you get to the back half and the charge count stops being a threat. I felt no sense of accomplishment in winning, just relief. I hope they never make another event like this again. In short, the worst possible thing the game has ever done. If events like this become the norm, done for good. And it's like, Jaren points out a frustration that I feel a lot of people are having. Again, I don't necessarily feel that the event fully sucks. I do think it is fun. I disagree there. But I think, like Raudo Kun had mentioned, its execution is where it fell off, right? They gave us what we always wanted, a playground for stacking units, and then they put a heavy RNG check at the back half of the fight, which basically means that you only got one team you can work with, right? And they have to be stackers. Non-stackers are not going to deal enough damage in the end to work, even if they have the defense to do so, right? Like, think Path to Power Kid Goku, he's a great example. With his full orbs, right, or even a decent chunk of orbs, he'll live the normals from Vegito. You're never gonna have him in front of a super, because those are the turns you're using the active skills from everybody else, including Vegito's turn, right? So he could tank the normals, or at that point, but the damage he's dealing is just not enough for it to even mean anything at that point compared to everybody else that you could actually lose due to that. And so you're only stuck using one type of team, and I think that's kind of where this comes out for a lot of people. 70 turns of just stackers is not fun, and I get that. I do get that. All right, moving on. Giant Boo. You think it's a nice option to have for some units, but it shouldn't be the standard, as most archetypes of units will just not work near the end. It should be treated like burst mode. Kid Boo. A unit gets bonus points if they're good in BHF, Red Zone, and the festival fight. I like that idea. I think it's good. I think that is a valid way to look at it, right? As an additional, like, hey, here's your top 10, but hey, also note that these 3 units are stackers and they'll be very useful in this fight, right? Like, I think that's a good way to approach it, right? Bonus points, right? Because realistically, not everybody is going to be good there. And not everybody's going to be good in, right? The characters that are good in Festival Fight are probably not good in Battle-Hardened Formidable Foes, right? And they might just barely be good in Red Zone, depending on which character we're talking about, right? Like AGL Vegeta is a great example. Really good in the Festival Fight. Not as good in Red Zone, right? He's usable, but he's just not as good. Quander. It sucks that anyone who seriously thinks that it will set a precedent for content moving forward. Okay, that's a bit much. It is a gimmick to celebrate the game's 10 years of playing, and sadly it's about fun and engaging as trying to grind 170 days. Yeah, kind of along the lines of what Rado was saying, right? Good idea, bad execution. Fecto Silas said last week you'd rather do 3 days of World Tournament, and guess what? We're getting another World Tournament, which is right now, by the way. I'm a little behind. I need to get grinding on that. Platinum, not sure yet if you like it or not. While I see it's cool to see huge numbers, the true potential of stacking units, on the other hand, stuff like turn limiter makes it difficult to clear because of RNG. No crits, additional, right? So pretty much everybody is stating the same things that I've been saying, right? The RNG of it all is what really makes the event unfun for a lot of people, because it takes, as I mentioned to King, right? Or not King, to Shadow, right? Like, it's the at the end of the day, the RNG is just what kills you, and it's no fault of your own, and that's really frustrating for a lot of people, right? You're committing 2 hours and then you lose because of something you couldn't control at all. That's no fun. So that looks like that's it for our responses on Twitter. Got a lot of good responses here, really do appreciate it. Again, the main question I want to focus on here, right? I love all the opinions on it, but I do, want people to really hone in on this, right? Are we going to evaluate units here? So let's take a look at our posts. Let's see who we've got in the post. So we got the 4302. Yes, it is fun. Yes, it is hard. And yes, it is too long to play in one sitting. You feel like we should be able to save our progress and restart. You play 30 minutes a day. An event for 3 hours is way too big of an ask. Yeah, you know what? I agree there. And you know what? Yeah, and that's the thing. Most casual players are not going to be able to complete this, and we should have checkpoints. And I agree with that point, right? We should have checkpoints on that. You get to a certain phase, you can, pause the game, go take a break, and then come back or something, right? DWD, very fun, very hard. Can't say much because you haven't beat it yet. So far, he really likes it. I hope you beat it by now. It's very useful to showcase units like G4 at max potential. Yeah, and I feel like that's what it is. Like, it's useful to showcase stackers at like their true potential, right? But outside of that, right, there isn't much use in grading a unit here. So, all right, kind of on the same page there. Said he does Dokkan. It is hard. Died like 6 times at stages 4 to 8 until yesterday. Tried to go into stage 39. Overall, like it. Gonna try it again soon. Okay, so, I mean, this person does seem to enjoy it, right? But dying at stages 4 to 8, I would assume, basically, that means, right, the charge counter is getting them. So, I mean, and that can happen. I have had that, right? Even with the best team, right? I just don't get orbs, I can't get additionals, and I lose on int chunks. Like, it's crazy how much RNG plays a factor. All right, Harsha, finally gotten a strategy of after getting beat. You're gonna play tomorrow. Hopefully beat it by now. It is fun, but you don't think it's fun to be replayed because of how hard and how much time it demands. All right, yeah, I don't think for me. It's not necessarily the hard, but I do understand that it's really about the time that it demands. Enrique, after he saw the truth of 6 hours on it, that's when he realized you're not doing it. Yeah, I mean, again, any event that requires that much of a sync and little completion for it, or little to show for it, that's kind of rough, right? It's a big ask for players, and even more so when we're asking players to, hey, because this is my big worry, right? With this, this is my big worry with rating units here, right? A lot of people aren't going to have the time to put a unit in here. So what are we going to do? We're going to tell these people that their opinions don't matter because they couldn't spend 2, 3, 4 hours putting a unit all the way to the end, right? Because who's to say you're going to get it on the first try, right? So, I mean, this is a really odd situation we're finding ourselves in, especially if we're going to say moving forward that we need to grade units here. All right, now, finally, Kroger. Oh my god, I can't read that. Kroger Purified Drinking Water. Okay. You think it's really fun, it's incredibly hard, and a lot of luck is involved, which can piss you off a lot, especially after 2 hours of playing. You totally get why people just go for the 25 Dragonstones and dip out. The only concern of evaluating units on this level of difficulty, not every unit coming out this year is going to be with that event in mind. You don't understand why people would want to, and if a unit can survive that event, it can survive the event moving forward, because it's probably going to be the hardest event for many years to come, but overall, they cooked, and definitely excited to see what other super hard events they come up with in the future, okay? So, I mean, good point, right? This is, you know, they're probably not going to build every unit with this event in mind. This is what I've been saying, right? There's a good chance the next Dokkan Fest doesn't stack, right? And then what do we do then? That's definitely going to be it. And again, I don't agree with the why people would want to evaluate a unit here, because again, just because a unit can do well here will not necessarily translate outside of that due to a host of all kinds of other factors. That is it for the posts on the community post. So we're going to transition over to our Discord and hit up the last couple responses here. All right, so we are in our Discord. Same question, so let's see who we've got. We've got Bag On here, True UI. Feel it's too restricted and long, and it doesn't feel especially fun either. Not a fan. Yeah, I do agree there. We got W here. The event further proves Vegito runs the game. Very long. Waiting to get to the later phases is fun. You hope it's a one-time event because you're not a fan of it. You do think future releases will be stackers, some more units. Yeah, and I think there will be a balance. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think that we won't get new units, right? And I hope that's not how this is being construed, right? I don't think we won't get units who won't be stackers. We will get stackers, right? You know, maybe worldwide is new stackers, right? Who knows, right? But we're also going to get units that aren't. That's just the nature of it, right? Not every unit released this year is going to be stackers, right? That would actually be incredibly bad, right? Because if every unit this released this year ends up being stackers, what happens when at Worldwide we get another situation where we have a Fusion Zamasu short fight situation? Now all of these units are rendered useless. Right now we have a plethora of fights, and so we have units that can be used in all kinds of different fights. All kinds of different strategies are required. Having just an entire year of stackers kind of ruins the it kills everything they tried to pull off in the 10th anniversary of giving us so much variety, I think. Moving on, all right. I did respond asking what if the next 3 releases don't fit into this event. I gave the example like Path to Power Goku's ECA. He doesn't work in this event. All right, usually and just the simple response was coming back, we usually get characters that can complete over time, and I do get that, yeah. Okay, moving on, Magico Uni, we got things that should count for stacking characters, and that's it. So, good point. W comes back and mentions about the mix of different types of hard content and different types of units. Okay, all right, so basically you guess we can get a mix of different characters, which is basically what I've been saying. Okay, we got Goku Balboa here. Honestly, can't say the whole event is difficult. It really is just when you get to the last 7 phases. Beast is scripted. Fat Boo, just make sure your units who can't take the super. Tech UI was honestly no issue. I will say Tech UI can snipe with that 11 million super, but for most units it's going to be fine. Fizz Broly Goku can kill you if you're not prepared. He is usually when you want to transform. And Diamond Goku and Glory are the hardest part. They're basically the last phase twice from Gogeta and Vegito. He can't help but remind himself of the Devil May Cry challenge, Bloody Palace, and find it harder because more skill than Dokkan, and it doesn't have a charge limit, but a time limit when you play Devil May Cry 4 or 5, if I'm correct. But that's besides the point. We get some units making a comeback, like in Broly and Namekoku Jutsu. See, the thing about this, right? Other games have had these types of things, right? Like these types of long gauntlet type challenges, right? Devil May Cry, yeah, I've completed that challenge in the. And another good one that comes to mind is the Master Sword quest in the Breath of the Wild in Legend of Zelda, right? This is a long gauntlet style. Like, it can take hours to complete every floor of these stages, right? But you can get to checkpoints. That's the thing with these fights. There are checkpoints. You can get to certain stops, get to certain points, and you can stop and save your progress and come back. You can't do that with Dokkan, and that's the big issue here, right? It is a long gauntlet style event. In the event, I agree, it is kind of like that, right? But the issue is, right, you don't have any way to save your progress, and I think that's what makes it worse. Now, Heart Striker, the problem with the event is it can take an average of 3 hours to finish. All right, and we think about this: if it can take 3 hours, the timer won't really have to dedicate to one event. Even still, 3 hours to fully get dedicated to Dokkan and see if you make it. The difficulty was not the issue. It's how long it takes and how long they want you to spend on it. I really want to know who thought it was a good idea to make an event that takes so long, right, without passes or checkpoints. Yeah, I said that's the biggest thing. Like, if you're asking players to take on a gauntlet type event like this, you need checkpoints, right? You need checkpoints, especially when the last 7 phases come down to so much RNG, right? There's no worse feeling than getting to the end and dying because of simple RNG and then having to start all over. It's not fun, and it's off-putting, all right? Now, Ichigo, thanks for responding. All right, it was fun and actually hard. You don't understand why all the hate. Only a few units are clearing this event. Not many units can clear the stage, though it is 110% fun. For now, ranking units based on this event, not all units will be designed for this single event, right? So say Ichigo kind of seems the same boat as me, right? It is fun, right? But we don't think we should rate every single unit here, okay? Alright, so, and that does look like we've pretty much covered everybody. Goku Balboa mentions that he agrees with the link, reminds him of Bloody Palace from Double. Yeah, okay. Got it. Okay, so, looks like we covered every single person in this post here. So, really happy I was able to cover this. Really happy that all of you guys took the time to respond here. I do appreciate every single one of you. I was hoping to get a response from Toon and Ningen. I did reach out to them. They didn't respond, and that's kind of what took this video so long. Hopefully we get some more responses in the comments of this video. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to think. I'm sorry so it's so long, but you know what? I like taking the time for these videos to hear and share your guys' opinion. Overall, what I'm getting here after everything I've mentioned and went over with you guys, a lot of people are sharing the same sentiment, right? It's too long. The charge counters create a situation of RNG that is unfair to the player, and we really don't think we should be evaluating units fully here. We can, right, as long as we're only judging them against other units that are good here, and we keep that separate from the other, right, our regular lists, right? I kind of feel like that's the best way to approach it. That is to say, I do not think the event is not fun. I do enjoy it. I loved bringing Tech Trunks into this. It was so great. It was fun. But, you know, it came with its own set of issues. So, guys, that is it for the video. If you like the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, if you didn't respond here to any of these posts, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think of the festival battles? Should we continue to showcase units here? Should we use that as an evaluation point against other units, non-stackers included? Or should we only evaluate units who can handle the event against each other? How should we approach it, and what do you think of the event as a whole? Let us know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. Otherwise, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and aloha.